She said, but you're probably gonna say I look lovely, but you probably don't think nothing of me. She was right though, I can't lie. She's just one of those corners of my mind, and I just put it right back with the rest. That's the way it goes. Like, baby, you send me out. Baby, you send me out. Set adrift on the river, so you send me out. Baby, you send me a careless whisper from a careless man, a neutron dance for a neutron fan. Marionette strings are dangerous things. A thought of all the trouble they bring. An eye for an eye, a spy for spy. Rubber bands expand in a frustrating sigh. Tell me that she's not dreaming. She's got an ace in the hole that doesn't have meaning. Reality used to be a friend of mine, cause complete control I don't take too kind. Christina Applegate, you gotta put me on. But guess whose piece of the cake was Jack Bourne? She broke a wishbone and wished for a sign. I told her whispers in my heart were fine. What did she think she could do? I feel for her, I really do. And I stared at the ring finger on her hand. I wanted her to be a big PM Dawn fan, but I have to put her right back with the rest. That's the way it goes, I guess. Baby, you send me out. Baby, you send me out. Set adrift on the river, so you send me out. Baby, you send me out. Set adrift on the river, so you send me out. Baby, you send me out. Set adrift on the river, so you send me out. Baby, you send me out. Set adrift on the river, so you.
Hello everyone, and we'll do that again. You don't even need to edit that out. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Straight White Whale podcast. My name is Darren Connell. This is episode 92. We have a guest in the studio today, but we're going to keep it professional. Before we start it, we need to do an ad read, and my pal Paul is going to do that because I'm not allowed to do it.
It was good feedback for the radio ad read that you did last week.
I should maybe just keep doing it in that voice.
just do it as a voiceover. Anyway, today's sponsor is Argue & Co Legal. So Alan Argue, what a legend, keeping the lights on here at Straight White Whale. They are a Glasgow-based law firm and their offices are in George Square. They can assist you with most legal issues and you can contact them no matter what the issue, because if they can't, they'll point you in the right direction. So there's no need for you not to contact them. Their main area of expertise is personal injury claims. So if you've been in a car accident, injured at work, fallen down a well, or bitten by somebody's pet tiger, I'm sure Darren looks like the type of cunt that's got a pet tiger somewhere, they'll be able to get you the maximum compensation that you deserve. The main difference between Argue & Co Legal and the big law firms that you see on TV and radio is the level of customer service and their approachability. I've used Alan and Argue & Co Legal for a car accident that I was in, and seamless process, great communication, and like you said, they got me the maximum compensation. So they're generally cheaper than any other law firm, but they also have no win, no fee. So get in touch. If there is a fee, they'll give you a discount if you quote Straight White Whale. That might sound a bit weird, like phoning a law firm and going, Straight White Whale! But he's saying he'll give you a discount. So if you have been in an injury or you have any legal problems that you're looking for advice, contact Alan on 0141 378 4145. Like I said, their offices are in George Square, or you can get them at argueandco.co.uk. That's ARGUEANDCO.co.uk. Thanks very much, Alan.
Thank you very much, Paul, for that professional ad read, and thank you very much, Mr. Argue, for sponsoring the podcast. Perhaps David could phone Alan Argue after he gets attacked for wearing that fucking jumper.
Oh.
Mate, you're a... what do you mean? I'm not bullying you, I'm just saying...
It's not the first time you've picked up on it, by the way.
Well, I'm just saying, right, see if that was 20 years ago, mate, and you walked through Glasgow with that on, you wouldn't be sitting here. There would just be a jumper floating down the Clyde.
I actually need a lawyer, by the way. I need a lawyer at the moment, right? Because I'm amidst a car crash claim and their murder. I'm not going to say who it is, what big firm it is, but they're taking absolute ages. So I think it's a very appropriate sponsor for this podcast.
Get in touch with him.
Oh no, the claims is already going through. I'm towards the end of it.
It's done.
I'm getting my free massages from the physio already. I can't switch.
All right, okay. Well, for next time then, give him a shout.
For my next crash.
Or deliberately go and crash your car.
Aye, let's start a scheme.
Who was it that told us that he knew about
James.
Aye, so because you weren't here, you're the guest. Do you want to introduce David before we start getting into it?
Yes, David, apologies. Hello everyone. For anyone that's listening, David McIntosh is a dear friend. He's a stand-up comedian, podcaster, and would you say event speaker?
I do a lot of speaking through my work.
Yeah?
I do.
Like Tony Robbins?
Aye, kind of like that, like Gary Vaynerchuk, Grant Cardone, one of those guys that tell you to sleep 4 hours a day and work the rest of it. Aye. Nah, not really.
Do you wear that jumper when you get it? It's kind of odd. What size is that?
Extra small girls.
Can I have it? I don't think that would get past my fucking Adam's apple, mate.
We're like a wee sports bra, mate.
So David's welcome. Development by David podcast. We
Yes.
mentioned the name of the podcast. But James told us a story, David, where he knew somebody who hired a bus, got the bus full of their mates, and then, what would you say, conspired a car crash so that everybody in the bus get a claim. I think it's genius, mate. Me and Darren are talking about doing it.
How would you do that so it had like maximum impact in terms of claim but minimum impact in terms of like damage? Like, what was the car crash?
That we don't know, but
Allegedly.
like, so say for instance, I hire a bus and I fill it with all my mates, and then you jump in your car, you're like, do you know what, I want fucking rid of this motor. You drive in front of the bus, you slamming the brakes, the bus driver, boom, into the back of you, he's rear-ended you. It's not your fault, it's the bus driver's fault. It's doigs that are getting pumped, but everybody on the bus gets a claim. Something along the lines. I don't know if that's how
How can we recreate that on the way home from this podcast?
Plus, I would lose a finger or something. Like, if I was involved with yous, I'd be like, I'd lose a finger or a thumb, I don't mind.
Deliberately?
Yeah, I don't need a finger.
If you were to sacrifice a finger, what finger would you sacrifice?
It's going to be the gummy one.
No.
That's like your USP. Shit, sorry. People can't hear me because I was fixing the camera. No, don't make it your calling, like your stigmata, your sign that you're directly related to Jesus Christ.
That birthmark spoke to you once as well.
Yeah, I was out my nut on acid though. Or it might have been tramadol.
Did you hear? So I take it you guys know about is it called The Sound of Freedom?
Yes, the movie.
Yeah. So you don't know about this, right? So this movie, A Sound of Freedom.
Be careful with buzzwords here if we're sticking this on YouTube.
Okay, aye. So Sound of Freedom is a movie that's been made by a certain group of people that are associated. I can't even say his name if it's on YouTube. It's like the QAnoners, right? And it's like a story where the guy that wrote it saying that he had this personal experience of sort of like but it turned out during the week, blah blah blah, we could get into it, we won't get into it, but it turned out that their whole thing came from, he said that it was a psychic reading from God that told them to make the movie.
So what you're telling me is that Darren's birthmark is capable of the exact same things?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't want you on the podcast.
I didn't want on it either. I've been trafficked here.
So David, we're going to get moving on. I've just realised you've got a career, mate. That's crazy, by the way. I'll be looking into that. I never knew that. But
see if I can find the article and I'll send it to you, right?
David, it's very nice that you've came on, mate. I was on your podcast as well back in the day. We're just going to shoot the shit, have a laugh, and just a chat about your life and stuff, and gigs and all that. But I was trying to think, when was the first time I actually met you? Was it for your podcast?
The podcast, you came in with a flat cap. Your mid-hair transplant, I'm sure.
Yeah. And your two pals were there.
And they were like expressionless the whole time.
Yeah.
They were just staring at you as you told your story.
Yeah, sitting on their phones as well.
Like it was like an interrogation or something.
What the fuck is this? So how did that happen? Did you just reach out to me?
Reached out to Paul to get you on.
Yeah.
I think. My auntie... So I watched Scott Squad, huge fan, saw that you were recording in the studio, and I reached out to Paul to get you on. And then since then we've just been mates.
Yeah.
And I've been to, I think, every Funny Bunch since.
Yes, you have, mate. And that means a lot, by the way. Thank you very much. Why? Why are you giggling?
I didn't come on Sunday.
What's that?
Because I didn't come on Sunday.
Oh, because I'm looking at you there?
Aye.
I never even realised I was doing that there.
Subconscious.
Side-eye.
Subconscious side-eye.
And then you even performed at a Funny Bunch as well. But I must apologise to you for that because the venue wasn't that good. So I'll get you back at the Blackfriars, mate.
I find it funny that like that's kind of like a historic gig of the Funny Bunch that you always bring up in your sets and you slag it and everyone's like, that was shite, but for me, because that was like the biggest gig I'd done, I thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
And every time you bring it up, I'm like, was it because of me? Was it because of me?
No, it was a venue. It was a venue, 100%. Because every single one I've ran so well, and then we went to a venue. I mean, nothing against them, they're just not a comedy venue. And it was just dark and damp. So I'll get you back for a Blackfriars, mate. How many gigs have you done?
About 20 now.
20? I thought you were more than that.
No, not many at all, mate.
Oh, wow.
Very new to the scene. I remember you were saying when you first started or relaunched the Funny Bunch or just started the Funny Bunch, you're like, I don't really book comics. I've not done like 50 gigs.
Yeah.
So
you lied?
I lied.
No. I've seen you a couple of times, mate, and that's why I booked you in. But I thought you'd done more than 20. So for people listening, David does events as well. Like, what would speaker events are they called?
Yeah, so through my work, I work at a big professional services or accountancy firm that's kind of gatekept by university. The kind of typical people that work there in history have been like middle class, kind of privately educated, Russell Group University people. And I kind of snuck through the back door as an apprentice from a council estate and realised there was no many people like me in places like that. And I wanted to start doing public speaking about social mobility, about working class, how you get more people like that into those kind of jobs. So I go around, I guess, the country and speak at my company, but other companies about how they can do that. And some of the challenges that I've faced through my story as well. So say stand-up wise, you've maybe done a gig to like 50 people or something, but what's the biggest gig you've done for that? I spoke in front of the entirety of my work. This was over Zoom and it was like 16,000 people.
Oh my God.
On a Zoom call.
Wow.
Yeah.
As you're sitting in your pants?
I was sitting in my dad's like spare room in his council house.
16,000 people. That
Live
is
stream from the
mental.
west coast of Scotland, I know.
Were you nervous?
No, really, mate.
Yeah.
Like the ones in person are far more scarier. Like I did one in Manchester a couple months ago, and that was like maybe 1,000 people in real life, because there's no hiding, man. You can't just like use some notes. You need to be on the ball. So I wasn't that scared, because I knew I could have notes at the side.
Yeah. That must be a surreal experience. Paul, you've worked with David before, haven't you?
Aye, David's come in and used the studio more than a couple of times. Aye.
Yes. Have you ever done a gig to 16,000 people?
16,000 people? No. I think the biggest crowd that I've ever played music to was 3,000, 3,500. And the most I've ever spoke in front is about like 900.
Wow.
Speaking about sales, of all things, you know.
Man, that is... I can't
But
believe...
I find the most... Oh, my cameras went. I find the most nerve-wracking stuff, so my camera was saying, is the smaller. See, like, I did a talk about podcast to UWS, University of West of Scotland, to like their media course. And there's like fucking 60 people there. And I was bricking it, mate. Absolutely bricking it.
It's because you can see like the individual reaction of every single person. Same with like some of the open mic gigs I've done, like obviously that's how you kind of start comedy. You actually can see exactly who laughs and who doesn't.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the bigger gigs, even like the Funny Bunch I did with you, like the laughs are drowned out by maybe 100 people that are there, or
Yeah.
how many people are there.
Or you'll see their face going like that.
You must get that a lot though.
I think there's something that freaks me out about like the intimacy of a smaller crowd of people. Like every single one, say like you do karaoke in front of like, so if I've went out and sang, you know, I would say that the average music gig that I did was say 200 people, right, ranging for like gigs where you're playing to like Nebday, all the way up to like, you know, like the bigger gigs at the Academy or whatever like that. See if I was to get asked to sing karaoke to like 4 or 5 people, worst nightmare, don't want to do it. It's got something to do with the intimate nature of what you're doing. Like when you're on a bigger stage to a bigger crowd, there's like a disconnection between you and them. You can almost like forget that they're there. You can get into a sort of flow state of what you're doing. But see when you're sitting there and people are just sitting looking at you, it's like impossible for you to do that.
Yeah.
So I find that freaks me out. And I've never liked it, never ever liked it, which is weird because doing this, it's really intimate, super intimate, but I don't know, something different between doing a podcast and doing public speaking, even though they sort of do cross over a wee bit or blah, blah, blah. But I just, smaller groups just means like more fear.
Yeah.
You ever died on your arse when singing, Paul? Like,
Aye.
really?
Aye. Fuck, aye. Aye, one night in Inverness I got a machine head for a bass guitar, go in and like scratch my retina, and also like I don't know if I've ever told this in the podcast before, but one night we played in London and it was like a massive gig. It was Camden Underworld, like, can't wait for this London, you know, blah blah blah. And we were headlining the gig, and the band that went on before us, sort of 6-8 weeks earlier, had been on tour with a massive band, like huge, like unbelievably huge, and they were like the New White Stripes. There was only like 2 of them, so like the gig was full for them. I'm getting deja vu. I have told this in a podcast, but I don't know if this
I don't think, no.
I told this in yours. So basically, I was on David's podcast and I told it in this, and it was the Smoking Band had come in London and I hadn't come in Glasgow. So what happened was the room emptied down to about 3 folk for like, I can't remember what the capacity of the London Underground is, but it was sold out. And we just went backstage, just took as many Class A drugs as I could get my hands on, and then like 30 seconds into the gig the place was packed again, and then I don't really remember anything other, like it just goes into a myriad of like me being a mess. The funny thing about being able to sing in a band or play live music is people don't really notice when you're like, so you can mask it. You can front your way through a gig. Like the ones where I would say that I've died on my arse, I would come off stage and people are like, oh, it's great. So it's funny, like your perception of it. Whereas I think for a comedian, it's less your perception, more like you just die in your arse, like you're saying the jokes and you're not getting laughs. Whereas for me on a stage playing music, it was more about my perception and my performance rather than anybody else's. That's what's important to me. I actually hated it when I came off stage and was like, gig was shite, and people would be like, I thought it was fucking amazing, because I would just be like, you don't know what you're talking about, or you're lying to me, which is worse. Whereas actually you don't realise that, no, they might have enjoyed themselves and you just don't get why.
Have you ever horrifically died in your arse, David?
Mate,
Apart from the funny bunch, kid.
cunt.
That was a joke.
Mate, hunters, mate. Because I'm like 20 gigs in, the kind of kill-death ratio, like to use a Call of Duty term, the KD ratio is like shite. So I've died hundreds of times. Guess leading up to the funny bunch, I died Mars twice in a row, 2 nights before. So when you asked me up for the funny bunch, I was maybe a month since I last gigged. So I looked on the open spot or open mic list to see what kind of rough gigs I could do before the funny bunch. So I picked Salsa,
Yeah.
Merchant City. It's a kind of Caribbean restaurant. Great bunch of lads that run it, but because they don't really...
How funny is that?
No, it's mad.
Caribbean restaurant does a comedy night.
Aye.
So I picked that one. Like great group of guys that run it, good friends with them all, but
Yeah.
like it's no well advertised through the bar itself. So most people who go to it are just going up for their dinner, you know, like first dates and all that. And then the second one I signed up for was a place in Paisley called the Gantry. And Paisley's, there's like a full set of teeth in the whole place, you know.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a rough boozer. So when I went up and did Salsa, my whole set that I did for the funny bunch was about masturbation, making like kind of boyish humour, tongue-in-cheek jokes about wanking, comparing it to other things. And loads of folk were sitting there eating their dinner and I'm sitting talking about wanking over my grand's bed sheets and all that. And honestly, I didn't get one laugh for the whole 10 minutes I was up there. And Chris Scott, who was also on the same funny bunch, just watched me die on my arse. Never met this guy before. He watched me die on my arse as I was like one of the open spots in his next show. It was horrendous. And
What did he say?
I think he just like kind of nodded out of sympathy to me, you know what I mean? Like, I know who you are, I'm on the same gig as you soon, I'm sorry son, basically. That's all that nod said.
But they've all been there, haven't they?
Oh, fuck aye. Because I'm at the stage now that if I die in Mars, we just kind of laugh about it in the green room, but it's still hard. It's still hard.
I've had a couple that are worse than that. The worst one I've had was, so I'd been doing open mics quite frequently after I did a comedy course, right? And the set that I'd built for that comedy course and that I kind of used for open mics afterwards was about the passing of my mum. So my mum passed in 2020, and as a way to kind of cope, I wrote a kind of 5-minute set about it. And it's kind of dismissive of it, it's quite tongue-in-cheek, it's really dark in nature, right? And so I did this couple open mics, and one of the lads that run one of the nights at Tenants came up to me and said, I think his name's Paddy Linton. He said, David, would love you to jump on one of our gigs. I loved your set. Like, why don't you try that down at Tenants? And for me, that was the first time I had been like selected to do comedy opposed to like just turning up for open mic. So you're on the poster, and for me that was a big deal being on the poster, and I mind sharing it on Facebook. And I had just moved from Ayrshire, where I'm from, to Glasgow, so I shared it on Facebook, not thinking that anyone from my hometown would turn up. And it was the night after I'd moved in, and bearing in mind this whole set's about the passing of my mum, kind of really tongue-in-cheek, really dark sense of humour, and I've got this kind of poster boy image online with my family, right? So post it online, the picture and the link, and the day before, just as I moved in to Glasgow, I got a message from my two mental working class blue collar cousins, right? They were 38, right? And they said, oh, David, we're up at that Top Golf tomorrow. We're going into West End for a couple of pints after. We've seen that you're on that gig. We'd love to come and watch you. And I'm thinking, no, mate, this is my third gig. It's all about my mom. Like, I can't have my cousins turning up to it. So I lied to them. I say, oh, sorry, I've just moved into my new flat. I pulled out, but if I'm around, I'll maybe join you for a pint of that, right? Leaving it at that, right? So the next day comes, I'm shiting myself for my first proper gig, right? 6 o'clock comes, I'm heading to the gig for it, the doors opening. And I get another message from them saying, oh, we're at that Top Golf, by the way. We've actually came to Tenants for a pint. We're going to watch the comedy anyway. If you're around, would you like to come? And I had to, like, on the way there, message them saying, oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you I'm back on the bill. And I'm fucking... fucking shiting myself, man. Honestly, me and my pals are walking there and I'm just like, the whole way there, I'm just saying my set aloud because I'm so nervous. And I turn up and it was after a Rangers game. So a lot of the punters who were there watching the Rangers game had stayed for the comedy. They hadn't even bought tickets and they were a rowdy bunch. And because I brought my cousins and a bunch of my pals, because I'd sold quite a few tickets, Paddy did a nice gesture and bumped me up before the headliner.
Oh man, main support in your fucking third gig. Oh my god.
And mate, it was kicking off. Every comic who'd maybe done 50 gigs, loads of open mics, was going up getting heckled to fuck, dying on their arse, literally arguing with the fucking punters. And at the same time, my cousins were getting fucking out their nut, out their bin, cutting across to the bar during the acts. They were heckling the other act. During the break, they were taking me up to the sign and getting selfies with me and all that. Obviously, I'm no pal with anyone in the circuit at that point or any of the local guys, so I'm pure embarrassed. And then I have to go up and do this set about my dead ma in front of their nephews and their mad wives. I go up and I'm trembling. I'm like doing a public speech. There's no tone in my voice. And there's a joke where I call my mum a dog in it, right? And I say this joke and the fucking grimace in their face. Every other cunt's laughing and they're kicking off because other folk are laughing at their deed auntie. And honestly, I have to cut this set early. And I say, that's all I've got tonight, folks. And I just walk off full of embarrassment and they've never talked to me since.
They've not talked to you since?
No, they have. Just birthdays and Christmases and that.
Just Facebook posts on your birthday. Happy birthday, David. Hope you're well. You're like, I'm doing well, guys. How are you? And it's like nothing.
It's the worst.
That's the worst, man.
They're Facebooking everybody. Be careful of him. So that your mum passed away in 2020. Did you do comedy? Did you do that as a joke because you thought it was funny, or did you do that to cope with it?
Definitely cope. So I'd enjoyed coming to the Funny Bunch. Like, I consumed comedy for years, and one of the themes that always came out in comedy was people using their hardships, using their maybe addiction battles or death or loss or recovery in sets. And I thought, well, that seems like a good way to start speaking about it. Mm-hmm. And when I did that course, the first thing that came to mind was, well, maybe I should make jokes and make light of the whole end-to-end journey of my mum passing away and the kind of grievance process. And as I started writing about it and cracking jokes, it actually allowed me to think about it more and allowed some of the hard things that I saw. So for context sake, I got a phone call in the gym from my dad saying, your mum's collapsed, like, can you head home? And as I rushed home, I watched my mum essentially pass away from a heart attack on my hallway floor. And I had to watch that. And obviously there's so many vivid memories that stick in through that experience, but I didn't really often revisit them. But when I changed the context to, instead of like reminiscing of it, of pain, and started to like look through those circumstances through laughter and through comedy, it allowed me to actually revisit loads of those memories and deal with them. And as a result, I started to come into Paul for therapy because I'd finally accepted like the whole end-to-end journey. So It was actually so therapeutic.
Mate, I never realised you did therapy with Paul.
I did.
That's brilliant. I mean, that is such a sad story, man. I'm sorry that you lost your mum, but it's an amazing thing that you found comedy through it. And Paul and myself talk about kind of dark things on this subject and on this podcast. And I know Paul's dad passed away and he's got some mad stories about his dad. I've got some mad stories about my family, and you can't just help but laugh at the fucking madness of it. I think it's a Scottish thing as well, isn't it? It must be a Scottish thing. There's no chance that there's people in like Colombia saying, you know what I mean? My dad's not getting any fucking teeth and he ran through the fucking living room, he's banging it. No, alright.
Because in Colombia they'd be like, El Papa, El Banger.
El living room.
Sorry, mate.
Aye.
I think it's a total human thing. Like, I think that we come at it from like that very sort of Scottish perspective, and when you're talking about people for the west coast of Scotland, specifically men, specifically like boomer men, you know, that generation of people that were raised by people that survived World War II and had lived through World War One, they were all kind of fucked, weren't they? So we've definitely got like that sort of perspective. But I think like processing traumatic experiences through laughter's, I think, a universal thing. I think there's so many American like David just said there, like how many of them go up and tell the story about their addiction, or go up and use the story of their life that's usually get some sort of hardship. I think there's something about comedy that attracts people that struggle to process things in a serious manner but find it cathartic to do it in that sort of like humorous way or whatever. I don't know.
And for me, I think it's like, it's such a better coping mechanism. Like, so many people, when you tell them you've lost someone, especially like being 21 at the time, people always say, oh, I'm sorry, and their tone of voice always lowers, and they're very empathetic, and they feel sorry for you, and I hate that kind of attraction. Like, regardless of what happened, like, she did pass away, it's a fact. Why always revisit it with a kind of tone of pain? Why don't you go back in time and think about the funny memories, think about the funniness of the funeral and some of the things that happened? If you're going to revisit it, why don't you revisit it with like kind of rose-tinted glasses almost? I don't know if that's just a coping mechanism, maybe.
Was there anything funny that happened at the funeral?
Aye, mate. So me and my sister have a very similar sense of humour. Like, I think maybe going back to Paul's point there, about this kind of boomer generation, like loss and death and tragic events was something that we seen through my parents, right? Coming up, my dad was from Kelly, he was grew up in a kind of abusive working class kind of background, and he lost loads of people growing up. Like, I had a twin, he lost his brother, my grandpapa's died around me, so we're so desensitized to death. So I think that's why we're able to make such light of it and go through these moments in time with laughter. But I remember at my mum's funeral, there's a couple of things that were really funny. My mum was such a hilarious person, so I know she wouldn't mind me telling these stories and making jokes about her on stage. I remember her vividly saying that when she passed away, she didn't want anyone to wear black, and she loved Bay City Rollers. Do you know the Bay City Rollers?
Yeah.
And they were like Les McCune and all that. He was a shagger.
Aye.
So they were like infamous for wearing like tartan, right?
Yeah.
So every cunt that turned up to my mum's wedding was wearing like multicolored tartan, right? And this was just before lockdown hit, so you're allowed like as many people at the grave as you want. So we shared it on Facebook. Like, these are the dates for the funeral. Turn up dressed as Les McCune, essentially, right? And
the priest's like, what the fuck is happening here?
who's dunted that holy water, man? I'm fucked. Right? So, and obviously, like, as young, like, early 20-something-year-olds, my sister was 18 at the time, like, so many people don't feel sorry they feel sorry for my mum, but they feel incredibly sorry for us, right? So I remember turning up graveside, graveside, I don't mean to laugh at this, right? Turning up graveside in the kind of family car, and it's me, my dad, and my sister at the back, right? Dressed like fucking fannies. And we look over at the graveside and it's packed, man. You could have sold tickets. My mum was like so well loved. She was such a radiant of light around my local area. And my sister clocks this guy. She goes, oh, I'll say his name. I don't think he listens to this, right? She goes, there's Graham Flanagan. So for context sake, Graham Flanagan was this wee guy that I was best mates with in primary school, and he was a bit of an introvert and a really fussy eater. Like, he was a bit of a peculiar young man. Great friend growing up. But one thing that was really unique about him was that every single dinner he had was a roll over hot dog, right? Right? And we're driving up in this family car right to the grave, and I mean there's hundreds of folk greeting their eyes out, just like nodding their head out of sympathy to me and my sister. All the eyes are on me and my sister. And my sister goes, same sense of humour as me, she goes, there's Graham Flanagan. I think I can smell hot dogs. Me and my dad and my sister burst out laughing, pissing ourselves. But it looks like we're laughing at every cunt dressed like Les McCune. And they're all greeting at us, and we can't keep it together, trying to walk at this car towards the grave, pissing ourselves laughing.
That's class, man. That's so funny. I was the same age, man, when I lost my dad. I was 21.
Were you as young as that?
Yeah, man.
Really?
And what I like, people feel... there was a couple of things that really annoy me about when people talk to you and they don't know how to act. It doesn't annoy me. It just kind of, it did at the time. It doesn't now, because I understand more about like humans, and death freaks people out. And then obviously, like, if they've still got their dads, you know, they're thinking about, oh my God, what age are you, 21? Oh, so they just think, what would I be like? I'd be a mess and blah, blah, blah. We're way more resilient than what we give ourselves credit for. Like, you get through shit, right? It's bad, but you get through it. But when I would say to people, what was it? The one that used to get me is people would be like, oh, got to meet my dad. Oh, sorry. And I'd be like, it's all right.
Folk have dads.
I know you've got a dad. I know, like, it's all right. But then now they'll say stuff about like, oh, what about your dad? And I'll be like, oh, my dad passed away. And I'll be like, oh, really sorry to hear that. And I'll be like, it was like 21 years ago, guys. Like, it's all right. I get what you're saying, but see, like that, I'm really sorry to hear that. It's like, happened a long time ago. I'm okay. Don't worry about it. You know what I mean? And like, I try and, because of that, I've got maybe a sense of that. And what I try and sort of like, so if somebody says to me like, oh, my mum passed away, I would always be like, oh, when did that happen? And then if it was like, oh, like 6 months ago, I'd be like, how are you keeping up? Rather than just being like, I'm sorry to hear that. Like, why are you sorry to hear that? Like, do you know what I mean? And, or what would happen if I were like, I'm happy? Like, it was you know what I mean? And like, I didn't like him, we didn't get on, or whatever it might be. It's no like necessarily the type of bit of information that you need to instantly be like, I'm really sorry to hear that, rather than be like, oh, when did that happen? And like, oh, that must have been tough or whatever, and just try and like, what was it like? Or are you all right? And like, how's your mum, or how's your thing with coping up? Like, rather than just being like, I'm really sorry to hear that, because you don't know the circumstances, you know.
Or you ever had someone who tries to relate to a story like that? I was back, so I moved to Glasgow, and I often go back down to Prestwick to see my old man. And it's like where he lives is in the heart of the scheme. And I was down visiting him, and I went and popped into like the spar shop across the road to get him some tenants, right? And there was this boy from my primary school who lives in the same scheme, like ahead of me in the queue. And this boy, a bit socially awkward, we've not spoken in years, and we don't have, like, our paths have taken very different kind of routes, right? And I say, oh, hello, Andrew. Like, do you remember me? My name's David. Like, good to see you, mate. Like, what you up to? And then he makes some small chat. He's looking for a job and all that. And he says to me, like, he's struggling to like think about what to ask me. So the first thing he says is, how's your mum? And I'm like, I feel so bad that I need to explain, because I know how he's going to take this. I feel so bad to bring this up. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, Andrew, but she passed away a couple of years ago. And the first thing he goes, oh, remember my dog Betsy? I had to put it down 4 years ago. And I'm trying not to laugh. I'm really sorry to hear that. But obviously that was the only parallel that he could draw between the stories.
That's crazy,
I
man.
would rather you just said, fuck your mum.
I mean, I think like the types of things that, it's dead easy for that type of thing to trigger somebody where they would maybe be like going like, that doesn't really compare, mate. You know, like losing your dog. But see, just like you're saying, it's the only point of reference that the guy's got, and he's actually trying to relate to you.
And you as a kindness, it was from such a good place, right?
Just comes out really awkward, backwards, and for some people that can be really like, they could be like, really? You're comparing the death of your dog to my mum? Like, okay. Fuck off, basically. But actually that guy's just trying to relate to you and be, you know, I kind of know what you're going through. And it's just like, humans are funny, man. Like,
I joke about that in my set. It's kind of aimed towards my brother. My brother used to be really bad for saying you've just got to get on with it. So we had moments like, I've come from a big family. I've had like an uncle die, and literally before the ambulance even took him out the house, my brother was like, well, you've just got to get on with it. I was like, gonna let me go through the process of grief first, you cunt? Like, that was my favourite uncle.
My favourite uncle. Sorry, I don't need to laugh at that.
No, I hear it's funny. I find the humour. I tell you another, this is quite sad, right? I've got a best pal. I was his best man at the wedding and stuff. We're childhood friends. And there was a boy that we were mates with in school that passed away about a month ago. And he was childhood friends with him from primary school right up. And then we went through different paths. And I stopped being mates with him when I was like 15 or something. But anytime I bumped into him in the street, it was always like brand new. And it was nice to see him. But he passed away. And my mate took it really badly, and I was kind of shocked as well, because I'm like, fuck man, I'm only 36, and that's somebody that was in my year, and you go through that process. So we went to the funeral, right, and it was fucking heartbreaking, because everybody for the school's there, right? Now, I actually felt myself getting emotional, and I was like, I can't believe I'm going to get emotional for somebody that I've not really seen for so long. But I'm at an age now that I know that you need to get that out if you do get emotional. So we're stoning, basically fucking stoning at the coffin, and I'm there with my pal to support him, and he's about to burst out greeting. I'm nearly greeting because my pal's greeting, and this mad cunt just walks up to us, right? Somebody that we used to buy hash off of in school, and he's like, literally a ball hair off of doing that on the coffin with his elbow, and he's like, I listened to your fucking podcast, Bobby. All right, Bobby boy, give your autograph, mate. And I was like, all right. And he's like, you're fucking doing all right for yourself, aren't you? And I'm like, mate, shh. He's like, his ma, the boy that passed away, his ma, his brother and all that, are like, I could have done that with my arm and touched his ma. And he's like, fucking Officer Karen. And I was like, it's good to see you, mate. And then me and my pal got back into his car, and it was one of the moments we couldn't help but just laugh at the absolute madness of the situation. Because I was like that to him. I wanted to fucking cry there, and my mate was literally slapping the fucking wheel. Like, how mental was that? A guy that we used to buy fucking hash off of.
He must have been smoking too much. He's in supply, that fucking weirdo, man.
Yes.
But I think that, I mean, like, see, we spoke about this before in the podcast where I was saying that, like, I actually think when you get to a place where you can actually, like, inject humour into stuff that's quite very sad, it's not even quite sad, very fucking sad, you're actually at the point where you're like, oh, I'm starting to move through it. Do you know what I mean? And like you were saying, why do we look back and look at things in sort of sadness? I think that like Darren says, like, I think that in the initial periods of grief, the reason why that happens is because your brain knows you need to get through this. We need to get through this. There's a lot of sadness here. You know, it will drain you. You know, it will make you unmotivated. It will do a lot. Grief can actually like make people like ruin their life. You know, they can go into an addiction. They can lose their house. They can end relationships. So I think when you think back, when you know my dad first passed away, and your mum first passed away, and you have the memories, so almost like your brain's like, get through these, because then we'll get to the point where we can look back and we can remember the fun, like the kindness, like the positivity that this person brought to your life. But man, he passed away 2021, right? Man, he had a lot of problems. Like my mom's side of the family, you know, spoke in your podcast about my own trauma and like what I went through as a kid and blah blah blah. But my mum, I think there's something in that side of the family that we've not been told, because they either all left or, you know, my auntie basically ate herself to death. And I mean that, like she'd been agoraphobic when I was like a wee boy.
What does that mean?
Couldn't leave the house, or else she would have panic attacks. She used to get explained to me like she gets dizzy and she feels sick, and I'd always be like, as a wee boy, going like, "What the fuck's going on there?" But then as you get older, you're like, "Oh, she was experiencing panic, right?" So she went through that, and then multiple suicide attempts, hospitalised, institutionalised. Came back out, actually had a right good attempt and a right good go at what you would say, quote unquote, like a normal life, a boyfriend and all that, fell apart, and then she just ended up housebound. But she ended up basically like chairbound, where she would just eat. She got really big, right? My cousin's not going to, I'm sure my cousin wouldn't be happy about me, sort of, he's not going to listen to this, but if he does, you know, I loved your ma, I'm no slagging her, this is just the facts, right? So my uncle that I was there on Sunday, right? He's from Portsmouth, he's ex-Navy, he's got zero filter. I'm talking like he does not give a fuck. He's been through cancer scares. He actually was on a submarine that during the Falklands where a missile missed the sub by a couple of 100 feet, and he was a radar guy, so they evacuated the submarine, but he had to stay at his post, and then he had PTSD. And then he nearly died of cancer, so much so they paid out his pension, you know, like his life insurance paid out. He survived it. So he now gives no fucks, right? He's at that age where he's like, I don't care what you think of me. And he just speaks his mind. So we were pallbearers, and the guy that's like the undertaker was like, do you want to carry her in, like, by your side? You don't need to lift her up. And my cousin was like, I would like her to get what I see as a proper send-off. So if it's not too much bother and the guys agree, can we lift her up? And I'm like, no bother. And we lift her up, and he's pure, oh my God. And he's like, he said, she could maybe put the cake down every once in a while, eh, Tom? Because my cousin's called Thomas.
Oh my God, man.
And I'm like, holy shit, did he just fucking say that? And I'm like trying not to bust out laughing. Like, I'm not even like upset. And I'm looking at my cousin, and my cousin's like, he had a look in his face as if he better shut the fuck up. But I was like inside in hysterics. Like, this is just no filter. I think we all thought the same thing when we picked it up. Oh my God, this is heavy. He did not filter himself. He was pure fucking hell. Oh, she could have maybe put the cakes down every once in a while, eh, Tom? And it's just like, I think like somebody like him has an easier time in life than somebody who would be like, oh, I couldn't say that to somebody. I'd be worried about how they would react and blah, blah, blah. I think people like, they get to that stage in their life, maybe they've met near death and they just realise like, fuck it, like it doesn't matter what people think about you. Just, if even you say something, you upset somebody. I know that maybe this doesn't apply to you, Darren, because I know like you love a grudge. But most people let it go after like a couple of days, or like they don't even think about it even sometimes, and you just get caught in that like, why did I say that? Why did I say that? And then I look at this guy, he's called Mac, he's Peter McSwain, and they called him Mac, and I just look at him and I'm like, do you know what? I want to be a wee bit more like that. Don't want to be making inappropriate comments about somebody that's in a coffin when I'm lifting their coffin, but also what he did there encapsulates something that I think is, you know, we could all move towards thinking less about how we impact people when we say stuff that just sort of rolls off the top of your head and blah, blah, blah. I don't even know why. I don't know. Funny funeral story.
I quite like using those kind of people though for like perspective shifts, right? So like during lockdown, I used, like, obviously we all had a shite time of it, right? And most people's mental health was a bit fucked, at least maybe not in the long term, but you'd have kind of off days. And anytime I had a kind of depressive day, I would go down and see my old man who, like I said, grew up in our side of Kilmarnock, and then he was in the Falklands and Northern Ireland. And I would just ask him to tell me a shitey story from the war to make me feel better about myself. And he was like, aye, right, son, so there's this one time I ripped the boots off a dead Argentinian, and then it was good because for the last 2 days I was pushing on my feet to keep them warm. And I'm like, all right, I'll go back upstairs and do my spreadsheets and thanks for the motivation, Dad.
Aye, Scottish dads are built different, aren't they?
Aye,
You didn't get things like depression when we were young. You're like, aye, you did.
And you're like, aye, but do you remember that, you know, you used to go and drink half of your wages on a Friday night and like be in the pub until Sunday afternoon, at which you would come home, have a roast, go for a sleep and go back to work? Maybe that was mental. Nah, that wasn't mental health, mate. Paul, nah, that's just what we did.
Aye.
My dad's got PTSD from the army, and when he introduces himself to new people, he always like introduces himself as having that or having like depression. And it's kind of heartbreaking to see, but the kind of funny thing about that is that he never calls it PDST, he calls it PDSA, and I'm sure that's like the animal protection company.
I was going to say, is the PDSA no like the social, like the, if your own benefits, you can take your there and get a free vet?
Yeah, that's exactly
I've
what
got PDSA.
So every time he introduces himself, he's basically saying, I can put my cat down for nothing.
Speaking about that, do you want to share that story? Are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready. So, talking about grief, I'm actually grieving at the moment. My best friend for 18 years by my side. Every step of the way, every highlight, every low light, he was there. He wasn't talkative, really, but I would talk to him and I could confide in him. My wee cat Tyson passed away two nights ago, 18 years old.
Oh, man. Tyson, though?
Tyson.
I mean, that's obvious.
Sounds like a bulldog, doesn't it?
That's not the funny part, fuck's sake.
Sorry.
I know
The funny part was how your dad broke the news to you.
Aye, so I got a text message.
You're making me look like a cunt here, fuck's sake.
Tell the people about your cat dying, David. Go.
It's because it's typical. It just reminds me of my family, mate. Like, Mama was like that in the photo. You want chicken fajitas for your dinner tonight? By the way, your auntie's heart exploded. Right.
So my dad, like this is a guy that tries to be so self-sovereign and look after every situation by himself, right? So he'll take on the role as a vet as much as he can, right? So he phones me the night before.
I think that's illegal.
So he phones me the night before. So, right, rest in peace. Right, let me disclaim this, right? Okay. Rest in peace, Tyson. Good guy. Absolute warrior. Love you, bro. This podcast is dedicated to you, right?
Rest in peace, Tyson is the name of the podcast.
Hashtag RIP Tyson. People think Mike Tyson's dead.
You ever seen those TikToks where folk run up to their parents like, you'll never guess what, Simon Kill found dead, 56? Folk will use that as the intro for this podcast, right?
I'd be disappointed if somebody came up to me and said that and I found out it wasn't true.
But the real the real Tyson is dead, right? So as the cat was passing away, right, I think he fell down the stairs. He was looking a bit limp. He's usually quite a kind of lively cat. My dad phoned me the night before he passed away and said, David, I think the cat's dying. Like just out the blue, I think the cat's dying. And I'm like, oh, right. Thanks for letting me know, Dad. I'm really sorry to hear that. Are you doing all right? Do you need any help? What do you need from me? And I'm in the co-op scanning my stuff. I'm getting like soup, I'm getting my wee bits and bob, and I just seen this request pop on my phone. It's FaceTime, and my dad's like, "Aye, let me video call you. Let me show you." I'm like, I don't want to see my cat dying. You know what I mean? Like, I think he's trying to like share that experience with me, and I'm like, Dad, I'm in the co-op. Like, I know they do like funeral care, but I'm in the
Jesus Christ! Like, yeah, look, he's dying. What? Fucking leave me alone, man. Jesus Christ! Like,
look, there's Tyson getting an 8 count. You know what I mean?
Scottish dads are built different, Dan. You're spot on, mate.
So I said, just phone my sister. She'll contact an emergency vet for you. I'm in the shop just now. I'm about to have my dinner. I don't want to see half a cat. You know what I mean? And then I get my sister to deal with it, right? And then the next morning, about 2 a.m. I get a text message through, and I don't read it. And I wake up at 6 as I usually do to read it, and I just get these three words: "Cat is dead." Actually, nothing else, but cat is dead. Not even enough to name the cat.
Tyson's dead.
But I actually don't think my dad knew the cat's name.
Oh, wow.
Or he never referred to the cat as Tyson. He always said, that fucking cat, that cat. Because the cat used to always wake him up by scratching the door at 6 a.m. And he would go, "Fuck off, cat," every single morning. That's what woke. When I lived with my dad, that was my alarm clock, was my dad shouting, "Fuck off, cat," every morning.
Wow.
So now my dad's not got an alarm clock. He's fucked.
Long lies for your dad. God, that's a shame, mate. I know it's like 18 years for a cat. Paul loves his cats. I know. I've never actually had an animal before, but I know that it can be...
You're an animal.
I'm the boy pig. I know it can be hardcore when people get attached to, you know...
They'll let your babies, aren't they, man? They'll let your wee babies.
Oh, man. So, I'm 25, 18 years old. I had it since I was 7, you know what I mean?
Wow.
It's been through everything with me, man.
Do you think your dad will be phoning you like, I heard it, it's still in the house?
So he was pure worried because he phoned the emergency vet when it was happening, right? And the emergency vet said, "Oh, just leave the cat overnight. It'll maybe pass away in its sleep. There's not much we can do. He's 18 years old." First thing my dad says to the emergency vet was, "Can I bury it in the garden?" And they're like, "No, you can't.
Can you not?
No,
is that against the law?
It's against the law in case other animals dig it up, I think."
Wow.
And it's just funny that's where my dad's brain went to, was how much is this going to cost me? What's the cheapest option?
So what is the process when your animal passes away then? What do you do?
Taxidermy.
Aye.
Get it stuffed.
You've never had a pet, but you want a stuffed cat. You want a stuffed Tyson.
How much? That's mad that you're not allowed to bury it. I mean, understandable.
A fox maybe come along and dig it up, and then you're having to fucking clean up the remains of your animal. You know, do you really want to be doing that? Kind of get it, but then also I'm like, I'm pretty sure we buried an animal in the backyard back in the day. I think we maybe did that with a couple of like gerbils and stuff. Guinea pigs. You just get fired into a shoebox. That was the way. That was the way it got done.
Mate, see your time, place and era, man. You probably could have sold that as an attraction. One round to mind and bury a gerbil.
Well, mate, like one day, like a lassie that we was in primary school, and I've got a feeling we were maybe about primary 5 or 6, and I can't believe I'm telling this. That's a lassie that went to school. So I went to St Thomas's, which was in Ridley, and in the 90s, the Lord Provost, the house was in Ridley. So Ridley, I've heard another comedian described Ridley as the Switzerland of the East End. It's got Black Hill, Ricasey, Cranhill, Carntine, Denniston, High Kilduke Street, all and about it, and then this bit's like not get a young team, not get a gang. Everybody's in a bought house. Like they've got like Australian style villas in Ridley, and then they've also got like these older, like I say, the Lord Provost house used to be in Ridley Crescent, so it's like really nice. Used to walk through it going to school, and there was a girl that went to school with me, and she came into school and she was like, "Oh, like my rabbit get." You know, we don't know, but she was saying in the class type thing, like the foxes come and try and attack it, but obviously it's in like a rabbit hutch, but they think that the rabbit got out the rabbit hutch and either a fox has got it or it's just away and we need to try and find it. And a guy that I went to school with, and what'll I name him? A guy called Tam. What did you say there? Don't. A guy named Tam found a dead rabbit in a bit of the Ridley called the Rocks, which is like weirdly not a play put. It's like a bit of spare ground with like a sort of mountainous bit of rock on it that people used to go and hang about and get drunk, and you couldn't see it for the street because it was quite high up. And he got it with a stick and he was running down Ridley like as we were coming out of school going, "There's your rabbit!" with like a rabbit carcass hanging first the end of a stick.
I have a feeling.
Sorry, is that funny? It's horrifying, isn't it?
I have a feeling that he's probably took the rabbit for our garden, by the way.
I think it turned out that it was a fox.
Oh, right, okay.
It was a fox. The rabbit got out the hutch and a fox grabbed it, took it because they found a foxhole. So it's took the rabbit and they've munched it.
Wow.
But aye, this guy was pure... But he was a wee bit... He was one of the ones in school, do you know what I mean? And when I'm looking back and I'm like... Wonder when went on his house, you know.
He's in the jail now.
I think he might have went to jail.
Oh, wow. Horrific. We're talking about animal sacrifice on the podcast
But
today.
sorry, I've got that PDSA.
You can't talk about that, man. I've got PDSA about the death of an animal.
The post-traumatic. They give you therapy dogs and all that, David. I'm going to get a therapy dog. Golden Labrador therapy dog.
I actually have like...
Depression dogs.
the depression candle. You know, you get the depression dog. XL bully. Get an XL bully. I do get like... See, when I think about like my cats dying, as they inevitably will within my lifetime, you know, it's like a weird thing. You're like, oh, I want them to... I don't like the idea of them like dying, but also like I hope I don't die first because I've only got like a 15-year lifespan and I want to be past 15 years. But see, when I think about that, it's really upsetting. They're literally like, I think I don't have kids, so I don't know if I've maybe like transferred like that part of me that's supposed to be like, oh, there's my Waynes to like, there's my cats because I don't have children. But
Did Sharon breastfeed them?
she did not, and I'll have you know that.
Wow.
Look Darren's face there.
Holy fuck.
I hope she doesn't listen to this podcast, mate, because I think she'd probably come and stab you in the throat for fucking saying that. See, to be honest, what I would say is if she could, she would have. Like, she's that attached to them.
Yeah. You never know now, or these fucking mad cunts. Somebody's probably tried it. Here, I used to get breastfed when I was younger.
How many years ago was that?
My uncle hated it.
Oh,
Come on. To the break of dawn, baby.
Is that why he was your favourite uncle?
The juiciest of tits. Rest in peace.
imagine that at his eulogy. He had some set of bangers on him, man.
Some set of areolas, man.
That's us approaching the hour, mate. A couple of minutes left.
Yes, David, we just do an hour, mate, so I hope you don't mind. You're always welcome to come back on, but for people that listen to the podcast, can you give yourself a punt, your own podcast a shout?
My podcast is called The Development by David Podcast. It's a bit more serious than this one.
Yes.
Growing up where I grew up, I didn't have any role models, so I wanted to create an online directory of role models. So its mission statement is to use origin stories as a self-development tool. I get to bring on the world's most fascinating people, either in the studio or over Zoom. Previous guests include Scotland's richest man, Sir Tom Hunter, Nick Yaris, a gentleman that was on death row for 22 years for a rape and murder he didn't commit, the ex-CEO of Sony Music, and people like Sunita, Simon Cowell's ex. So really, really cool people and some local guys who come in the studio as well.
Amazing.
Thanks for letting me plug it, mate.
Amazing, mate, no problem. And then obviously David's got Instagram and Twitter and stuff, and I was on his podcast, so
was I. So you can go and
check out our. Maybe me and Paul can return, mate, as guests. We need to start double teaming cunts. That just totally came out the wrong way there.
That came out of ring.
That came out of that. I've got that fucking PRD, you know. The PRD disorder. So thank you very much for joining us. I apologise that it took so long, mate. But shout out to Alan Argue & Co for sponsoring the podcast. If you leave us a 5-star review, it would be appreciated. And rest in peace to dearest, sweetest Tyson.
Rest in peace, Tyson. I've not even got a cat.